Hello, so we are here to present the Japan and Vietnam economic systems and also intrinsically linked their political and legal systems. We are Sofía Ramos, Lucía Arcones, Gonzalo Abrantes, and me, Beatriz Otero. Moving on, we have decided to divide our presentation first to provide some main ideas, then go into the economic systems, and then their legal and political systems. The first country to present would be Japan. And chronologically, we can say that the modern Japan, or this artificial concept that was created, started, let's say, with this key date, which is the Meiji Restoration, in which economy was liberalized and their economy opened up. We see how Japan also their economy was destructed after World War II, but there was this decade or this period of Japanese miracle in which high economic growth rates were achieved, and it was quite astonishing. Then recession and the real estate bubble burst, and a lot of recession happened. Moving on, we can see this event of the earthquake Fukushima nuclear disaster that also made the country suffer a lot. And actually a change of government occurred, and in 2013, the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which was recently in September, which was changed, Shinzo Abe launched his famous and economic policy Abenomics, which influenced very much the country. Okay.
Now we're going to be looking into Vietnam's history. Vietnam was occupied by the Chinese for over 1,000 years until 938 AD. It was then independent until the mid-19th century when it was colonized by the French. Then it was occupied by Japan during World War II. In 1945, independence from France was declared and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam was born. A year later, in 1946, Vietnam held the first National Assembly election, which adopted its first constitution. However, the situation was precarious as the French tried to regain power by force, resulting in the First Vietnam War, which started in 1946 and ended in 1954. After the defeat of France in 1954, the country was divided into the North and the South. The South was named the Republic of Vietnam, while the North was called the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. The intervention of the United States led to the Second Vietnam War, which ended in 1975 after the victory by the North, and then the country was unified. So now we're going to be looking into the economic systems and institutions of Japan and Vietnam.
So now I'm going to talk about the economic system of Japan, which is state capitalism. And in order to understand it, we gave an overview of the economy of Japan since 1960. And between 1960 and 1990, they had a 30-year expansion, which was considered a post-war miracle. So they had an economic growth of 5 to 10% year over year. Then between 1990 and 2000, they had a lost decade. So after massive investments in public programs, huge debt deficits, the economy collapsed in 1992 when the housing market and stock market collapsed due to inflated prices. Then in 1998, the country did a structural reform as an attempt to recover the economy, but the economy entered a deflation period until 2008. In between, they did a structural reform and quantitative ease. So they tried to expand the country's money supply in order to raise inflation and economic growth, but the policy failed to introduce any growth, and until 2012, the country ran a deflation period. After 2012, the Prime Minister Abe believed that increasing wages would increase consumer expenditures, and this would increase corporate profits, so would have a snowball effect in the economy, and they purchased 60 to 70 trillion yen in bonds and securities, so they doubled the money supply of the country, and they finally went out of the deflation period. And by 2018, they entered a free trade deal with the EU, and nowadays Japan is a free market economy. So they have a state capitalism. So the role of the state in businesses is the companies are privately owned but cooperate closely with the government. In terms of society, they focus on paternalism and social solidarity. And in terms of the organization's model, they have a workforce and management that have close contact and strong loyalty ties.
Okay, so now really quickly providing some key concepts. We find this is going to be quite brief in the sense that just saying that the Japanese system, we can say that it is not purely a capitalist democracy as maybe the Western societies. It's more institutional hybrid, as Gonzalo just said, because it was fusioned with more traditional forms of authority and hierarchy, and this still resembles in their system. Also, it's key to understand that due to the Chinese rapid growth and overwhelming economic power, they had to refocus their international trade space, and that's why they are starting to focusing on the automobile, electronic equipment, machine tools exportations, and also the service sectors, which amounts to 71% of the GDP. So we can see that the Japan economy relies heavily on servicing and the financial industry with the Tokyo Stock Exchange, which is quite important. Very quick, the Abenomics, we see this economic policy package that was launched by the Prime Minister, Abe Shinzo, and we can see that it was based on three pillars, which is aggressive monetary policy, flexible fiscal policy, and growth strategy. And there's no timing to go over them in depth, but just say that the growth strategy has to be very much oriented, and they're going to invest a lot in healthcare due to the issue of rapid aging population and a lot of aging population, and that it's an issue for the labor, for the productivity growth and the labor capital. Okay, and you can see here in the graphs how they grow, but not obviously as strong as China, in a more steady manner.
So really quick, just to see how it's quite surprising in this graph how the Japanese indebtedness levels are so soared in comparison to other countries like Greece, which we all imagine as the worst. And this is just to show how the economic system in Japan works, in which the government has to provide a lot of financing and refinancing, but it is, as said here, all held domestically, the debt. And through these dynamics, they have solid domestic investor base. And that's why the country is able to keep yields low. Okay.
Okay, these are just some figures of the GDP and their debt. As we see, it's a very in-depth country compared to GDP ratio.
Okay, now talking about the economy of Vietnam, it is a socialist-oriented market economy, which is the 36th largest in the world measured by GDP and the 23rd largest measured by PPP. Vietnam's shift from a centrally planned to a market economy has changed the country from one of the poorest in the world into a lower middle income country. Vietnam now is one of the most dynamic emerging countries in the East Asian region. They have a mixed economy in which there is limited private freedom, but the economy remains highly controlled by the government. They have experienced rapid economic growth over the last 30 years. From 2002 to 2018, GDP per capita increased 2.7 times and more than 45 million people were lifted out of poverty. The dominance of the country's numerous state-owned enterprises, which dominate market access, credit and investment, and control physical assets, Also, the key features of Vietnam's economic success are trade and foreign investment, and it's important to note that the productivity and share of domestic value of Vietnamese firms have actually declined as its economic integration has increased. So here we can see that the population is 95 million, and as we said before, it's the 36th largest GDP with 245.2 billion US dollars. The PPP is the 23rd with 710.3 billion US dollars, and the debt to ratio is 48.5%. Also, as you can see in the chart, Vietnam is one of the fastest growing economies in the world.
So now we're going to be looking at the legal institutions.
Yes, so here's the Japan legal system. So it has been quite controversial whether to classify it as a purely civil or common law system. But indeed, it has received influence from both. Therefore, we can classify it as a hybrid system. It has received influence from the German civil law and from the US common law system. It is true that Japan cultural, social, and roots are very much linked with a Confucianism, which is an ideology in which litigation, there's no room for litigation, and they resolve disputes through conciliation, harmony, and social restoration. So always disputes were never settled through law. That's why the law, the evolving of the law was slower than in other countries. And also, as we see, until the Meiji era, there were no lawyers in Japan. So it's not like, it cannot be compared as other systems in the Western societies. And as we said, there are limited lawyers. There's only one law school in the entire country with 30, it's quite competitive also the entrance because there are only 30 spots. Therefore, only there are 30 graduates per year. And lastly, just say that this hybrid system it still works. So it's quite overall. Okay. No, just saying their judicial system and how it is organized. Quite similarly to civil law countries, it is divided. First, we have the first instance, the district courts. Japan is divided into 49 districts, therefore, we have 49 district courts. We also have, for lesser civil and criminal matters, there's a threshold that determines the severance or not of the subject matter of the case, and we have the summary courts. If not, we have two opportunities for appeal, and the appeal courts are the high courts of Japan. Obviously, if you are appealing from a summary court, you would appeal to the district court. And lastly, we have the Supreme Court of Japan, which only deals with, it's not, there's this misconception that a lot of cases, if they are appealed from high courts, they would go to the Supreme Court. No, there's this barrier in which certain subject matter, it depends on the scope of the case and of the rationale materia, the materia of the case, whether it has constitutional relevance or not to go to the Supreme Court. And here we can see the crime index. The conviction rate is very high, and this makes sense in the sense that the conviction rate is almost 100%. We can say it's a very strict system. And this kind of goes in line with a very low crime index because obviously punishments are very much enforced.
So since Vietnam's independence on September 30th, 1945, Vietnam's socialist legal system is influenced by the Eastern and Western legal traditions, the French civil law system, and the Soviet communist legal ideology. The current legal system characteristics are: legislation is the most important source of law, courts are subordinate to the legislature and must make decisions based on legislation, and policies are set out by the Communist Party, which is the only political party in Vietnam, which can lead to changes in legislations in the future. And here for some statistics, the crime index is 54.7, which is moderate. They are ranked number 55 in the world. The conviction rate is 128 per 100,000 people. And the suicide rate is 7.3 per 100,000 people, which is ranked 119 in the world.
Now moving on to the political systems.
So now I'm going to talk about Japan's political system, which is a parliamentary system and is divided in four main categories: the people, the diet, the executive, and the Supreme Court. So the people are who elect the diet, and the electoral system they use is a mixed member proportional representation. Then the diet has the ability to approve laws, has the legislative power, and it's currently led by a conservative party, the Liberal Democratic Party, that has almost continuously been in power since its foundation. The diet is divided in two houses: the House of Representatives, which elects the cabinet and can override the consular vote if they have 2/3 of the votes, and the House of Councillors, which approves legislation and is renewed every 3 years. Then we have the executive, which is divided by the emperor and the cabinet. The emperor represents merely a symbol to the state, and the cabinet has the executive power, and the head of cabinet is the prime minister. For the past 24 years, they had 17 prime ministers, which makes it unstable, and it's hard to maintain consistency and continuity in policymaking. Then we have the Supreme Court, which has the judiciary power and deliberates on constitutionality of the laws. Finally, to compare Japan's political system to other political systems, we use the Corruption Perception Index.
So now looking at Vietnam's political system. Vietnam is a socialist republic with a one-party system led by the Communist Party of Vietnam, the CPV. The Communist Party of Vietnam is largely influenced by Marxism, Leninism, and Ho Chi Minh thought. The Socialist Republic of Vietnam is a law-governed state. The political system was established upon the birth of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam and it's made up of the following. The state regulates the society by laws under the leadership of the Communist Party of Vietnam. The state is a central organization and the pillar of the political system that realizes the will and power of the people, acts on behalf of the people, and is accountable to the people for the management of all activities of the social life and domestic and external affairs. Then we have the National Assembly of Vietnam, which is the highest level representative body of the people. This body has the supreme supervisory power to oversee all government functions and the implementation of the constitutional laws. It elects the president, who acts as the head of the state and commander-in-chief. And then we have the prime minister, who is the head of the government and is appointed by the president. The government is the highest body of the state administration of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. It has the same term of office as the National Assembly. The government administers the implementation of the state's affairs in the fields of politics, economics, culture, society, national defense and security, and foreign relations. It assures that the constitutional laws are respected and executed, and it guarantees the sustainability and improvement of the people's material and spiritual life. The government consists of the Prime Minister, who is a National Assembly deputy as provided by the Constitution, deputy prime ministers, ministers, and other members. And then we have the judicial organs, which are the Supreme People's Courts. Then we have local people's courts, military tribunals, and other types of tribunals, which are established by law as the judicial organs of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. The Supreme People's Court is the highest judicial organ in Vietnam. And then here we also have to compare with Japan the Corruption Perception Index, which we can see it's number 37.
Okay, so here just a quick recap about the main differences. We find that the economic Japan is capitalism, Vietnam is socialist-oriented market economy. Legal, Japan has a hybrid law system, more with influence from civil law countries, and Vietnam is a socialist legal system. Politically, Japan has a parliamentary system, and both has a parliament, and Vietnam, it's a socialist republic, but with one party system. Thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed, and it was useful and fruitful for you, this presentation. We are glad you watched it.
Thank you.
Thank you.